harder act to follow once when I saw the terrific performances of Bart and Pinky. Thank you, Bart and Pinky, for that. I see we have a full room and it intimidates me. But first of all, let me thank you all for juggling your busy schedules. I know some of you are jammed with appointments, but I appreciate your taking the time out to beat the traffic and find parking and come here on a busy rush hour. But it feels really good to be surrounded by so many friends. They say that every work of fiction is in some sense, in some profound sense, autobiographical. For even imagined events or characters carry within them the signature traits and values and passions of the author. You might then see in the book we're launching today traces of me, even of our times together, or of the ties that bind us. Just as the novel was shaped by me, so also you have shaped me, and I was shaped by you in the many and different ways that you have touched my life. So as you join me in my joy and pride at the birth of this first, and possibly only novel, know that indirectly you had a part in its production. You know, being a bachelor, I suppose I will never have experienced the joy of being a proud father. So the birth of this novel, this baby of mine, is probably as close as I will ever get. But tonight, I'm not only proud, but I'm also thankful for all who made this birth possible. To start with, I would like to thank the delivery team, Anvil Publications, and head midwife, Karina, and her team, Joe and Gwen and Denise, and Crick for the editorial work, Annie and Ibarra for the cover design, and of course Ben Cab for that marvelous painting on the cover. Then there are of course those, some of them in this room, who have inspired and helped and guided me, who agonized with me and celebrated with me as I went through my pregnancy, I guess, between the time I was conceived until the time you were born today. I think you know who you are, and I thank you. You know, last Monday, Margot of the Inquirer was interviewing me and was asking me not only what I wrote, but also why I wrote and how I wrote. It made me reflect on the long process that culminates today. I realized that I had been raised both at home and in school with a sense of history. At home, I grew up surrounded by portraits of my grandparents and great-grandparents. You see some on that side of the hall. And some of those people are part of the story in the novel, too. I lived in a house whose saga was presided over by La Chula, the Juan Luna painting over here. My grandmother used to boast that Juan Luna had given it personally to her father when they were both in prison. But that's also part of the novel. But this Luna, of course, is not going to Hong Kong for an auction. In fact, I think it's the first time this Luna has left the house. It's the first time he's painted it publicly. But as a high school student, I remember Mr. Lara had a spellbound with his eyewitness account of when he was a little boy at the execution of Jose Rizal. In college, Dr. Foronda, who many of you know, chose a few among our class to interview the aging Aguinaldo just a few months before he died. Of course, later in life as undersecretary, I had the privilege of working with the National Museum, the National Library, the National Historical Institute. I see the director of the National Library here. And helped in the formation of the NCCA, of course, the decade of nationalism which culminated in our centennial. But although my love affair with history was long, the actual conception of the story was quick and exciting. I suppose most conceptions are. The idea came to me during my LA days as a filmmaker in the 1980s. I presented it as an idea for a screenplay to the Hollywood gurus I idolized at that time, and they loved it. I remember Academy Award-winning writer Sterling Philippan saying to me that he could easily persuade any Hollywood actor to take the role of Tom Wilcox if I got the project together. But as many of you know, the Corey government and then later UNESCO took me away from that world. But still, the story in me never died. So 3 years ago, when sickness and a forced leave of absence from work gave me the chance, I found the time and the determination to make this germ of the story in me grow. I naively thought, well, writing is a big part of my job. I write emails and speeches and reports, even UN declarations. So I could easily put the story to paper. I could, and I did. But to my dismay, the product was not a novel at all. scholarless, and my respected writer friends had to gently remind me, fiction and novels are a different language from reports and speeches. Different skills. When feeling like an idiot, I humbly had to learn a second language, a new craft. I had to write with a heart and not just with a head. It's much more difficult. But since the story was embedded in a historical reality, I had the intellectual chore of research as well. But it was also a love story and had an emotional task facing me too. So the book I gave birth to had to be, in a true sense, a product of a marriage, of history and romance, of fact and fiction, of the mind and of the heart, of content and form. For helping me with the historical aspects, I am grateful to friends and scholars who lent to me or pointed out to me useful materials, to the helpful people of the National Library here and the Public Library in New York, which I often escaped from my hospital bed during my illness. And for helping me, not with the intellectual part, but with the harder part of capturing emotions, atmosphere, rhythm, relationships, and a deeper sense of reality and truth. I must thank my special friends, the writers, and those in the performing arts, stage, screen, concert halls, even catwalks. Their experience with the human emotions and realities that they portray constantly in their work served as my compasses in navigating the truth and the emotion of this novel. To them I owe a huge debt of gratitude. Many of them are here. You are the true ninongs and ninangs of this baby of mine. Your experiences, your talents, your passions, you're sharing with me, your hearts aflame. These are the lights that guided my way. Maraming salamat. Marco asked me Monday why and for whom I wrote. It was hard to answer. All I remember was, like any woman after conception, I felt there was this child in me that had to be born. This story had to be told. But now upon reflection, I realized it must have come from an awareness that especially in turbulent times like this, nothing is more important than a true sense of identity, a firm grounding in one's cultural and historical roots. And that seems dreadfully missing in today's Filipino, all of us included, but especially among the youth. And especially, now, I notice now that they live overseas, among Filipinos abroad. Many of whom are really seeking and thirsting to know more and more about who they are and where they came from. A little anti-commercial plug here. What would be a better Christmas gift to your overseas than a book that gives them what's in it? In an ironic sense, therefore, this book is written and intended less for you, the cognoscenti and literati of Philippine society, and more for those who do not go to book launchings, those who do not read much, those who do not know Philippine history. For them, I'm hoping that the book is first of all an entertaining and compelling love story, that they will follow avidly, but one that will indirectly, subliminally, painlessly develop in them a better understanding of the struggles, heroism, and splendor of their country's most glorious period. Let me end by inviting you all then to enter the world of Tom Wilcox and Corinne Del Pilar. When I entered their world, when I wrote this book, two things happened to me. Two precious things. I remembered what it was like to be in love. And I remembered what it was like to be proud to be Filipino. I hope when you read this book, the same two things will happen to you. Wouldn't that be great? You too can set your hearts aflame for a better world. In these troubled times, there is nothing we need more. Love, not war. Hope, pride in our country, not despair.